It is a story that takes place in Galveston, Texas, and it's an island that is off the coast of Texas, close to Houston, if you know the Houston area. The storm takes place in 1900, and it was the worst natural disaster in the United States. Catherine she has the outsider's voice. She is new to Galveston, Texas. She comes to Galveston because she's involved in a scandal. So she leaves her home in Ohio, comes to Galveston and marries a dairy farmer, and his name is Oscar. The other narrator is Nan, who is from Galveston, and she is the insider's voice. So these are characters, all three, Catherine, Oscar, and Nan, are dealing with their own personal hurricanes. I live very close to Galveston, spend a lot of time in Galveston, and the storm is just very much a part of Galveston's history, and all other hurricanes are compared to the 1900 storm. And but much has been written about the city, but very little about the rural people who lived outside of the city limits. And so I felt a great obligation to remember those people. Everything I read, their stories have not been told. I think that I feel a great debt to the people I'm trying to remember in the stories. And in the first book, I was trying to remember, or just to give a story to a woman who was in a photograph that I happened to see, and the photograph was not, there was no name, so I didn't know her, and I felt like she was owed a story. In The Promise, I felt that because the rural, uneducated people have been forgotten in the history books about this storm, that I owe them to, and I mean, it sounds like very, like I can really make a difference, but just for me, I owe them a story. Whether anybody reads it or not is beside the point. That, you know, in today's world, we all have kind of scary things in the world happening to us, and we have fears, but that's just the way it's always been, and people have always found the inner strength somehow to overcome these obstacles. So it's just a reminder to me that, you know, together we can pull through things. You know, it's a joy to step away from the modern world and to go back and have to assume a different point of view, to think as people thought in 1900 or whatever year I've chosen, because it's not only just how people thought in that year, it's how it's kind of their whole lifespan. So Catherine's born in 1870, so I have to think about what her point of view would have been since the time of her birth forward. And so that is a real joy. And you know, there is just something about when you finally get a good sentence, because a lot of times you don't get a good sentence. You don't, but when you get a good sentence, then you just feel like, I just owe myself a piece of chocolate cake. The promise, there's many layers of promises in this book. There's a promise that Nan makes to Oscar's first wife about taking care of his child, and then there's a marriage, and that's a promise to people. And then Oscar has promised his first wife that he would remain a Catholic and raise his child, so that's another promise. And then I think that there is the promise, the ultimate promise is just to remember. And I think that after the storm, people felt this great obligation to remember those who did not survive. And another promise, I keep spilling out promises, is the promise to rebuild Galveston, not to let this storm be the end of the island.